Ever heard of skirret or good King Henry? Probably not, but back in medieval times, these veggies were kitchen staples. Over the years, they've been pushed aside for more familiar crops, but our ancestors relied on them for hearty meals. Some were packed with flavor, others had surprising uses, and a few might even deserve a comeback. Let's take a journey through the lost vegetables of the past. You might just find a new favorite. Tansy. Tansy, also known as common tansy, bitter buttons, cow bitter, or golden buttons, was a staple in medieval kitchens, often used in puddings, omelets, and even medicinal teas. This herbaceous perennial was believed to promote digestion and ward off intestinal parasites, an ever-present concern in an era before modern sanitation. Tansy leaves have a bitter, slightly camphor-like taste, which made them popular for flavoring dishes, especially in Lenten meals when meat was forbidden. Tansy is a member of the daisy family and is native to Europe and Asia. It has been introduced to other parts of the world, including North America. Tansy was also used to make a type of beer called tansy wine. Though widely eaten in medieval Europe, tansy eventually fell out of favor due to its toxicity in large amounts. Some English households, however, continued to use it in small doses, particularly in Easter dishes, where its green hue symbolized renewal. In Ireland, tansy pancakes were once a festive treat. Have you ever wondered what flavors our ancestors considered normal, but we might find too strong today? Tansy is a perfect example. It lingers on the fringes of modern herbal medicine, but you're unlikely to see it on your dinner plate anytime soon. It's considered invasive in many parts of the world. Catmint. You might recognize catmint as catnip, the herb that makes cats go wild. But did you know it was also a culinary and medicinal plant for humans? In medieval times, people brewed catmint into soothing teas to ease colds and stomach ailments. The leaves have a mild minty flavor, often compared to oregano or thyme, making them useful in soups and stews. Catmint was particularly popular in England and France, where it was planted in monastery gardens and used to season meats. It was also a staple in folk medicine, thought to calm nerves and even induce sleep. Some medieval cooks blended it with honey to create a simple syrup for cough relief. The strong aroma from catmint made it useful as an insect repellent, safeguarding homes and stored goods. It was also sometimes added to wine for extra flavor. Medieval catmint served as a practical and valued herb in daily life. Could a medieval herbal remedy still have a place in today's kitchens? Maybe. Catmint is still grown in some home gardens, though it's more for feline entertainment than human consumption these days. Orache. Alright, let's talk about orache, or mountain spinach. Think of it as medieval spinach's slightly wilder cousin. Yeah, spinach was around, but orache? That stuff was everywhere. Seriously, it was a hardy little leafy green that basically said, "Hey, I'm edible, and I'm growing whether you like it or not." So, picture your average medieval peasant. They're not exactly hitting up Whole Foods, right? They needed greens and orache delivered. It's got this slightly salty, kinda tangy vibe, so it spiced up their, shall we say, basic diet. Boiled, stewed, maybe even tossed into a random pot of something. It was the ultimate throw it in and hope for the best veggie. Orache was especially valued in France and England, where it was cooked much like spinach and mixed with eggs or cheese. It was also considered a famine food, growing well in poor soil when other crops failed. Now, why exactly did orache disappear from our plates? Perhaps because spinach stole the spotlight, but this ancient green is still cultivated by heritage gardeners who appreciate its resilience and unique taste. So, next time you're thinking about spinach, give a little nod to orache, the unsung hero of medieval meals. It was the OG leafy green, and it definitely earned its spot on the table, or more likely, the rough-hewn wooden plank. Mallow. Mallow was a humble yet indispensable part of medieval diets. Rich in vitamins and boasting a subtle, slightly sweet flavor, it was commonly boiled or fried. In times of hardship, it was even eaten raw, providing much-needed sustenance. Jute mallow came from Africa and was known as the food of kings in Arabic. In ancient Egypt, it was highly valued for its nutritional content. The Romans introduced mallow to Britain, and by the Middle Ages, it had spread across Europe. Peasants and monks alike harvested its young leaves for soups and its flowers for medicinal teas. In Mediterranean regions, mallow was mixed with olive oil and garlic for a simple but nutritious dish. Some still believe mallow has a future in modern kitchens. With its mild flavor and high nutrient content, it might just make a comeback in the era of foraging and sustainable eating. Cardoons. Cardoons, a cousin of the artichoke, were prized in medieval kitchens for their tender, celery-like stalks. In France and Italy, they were often braised in broth or baked with cheese, a precursor to today's gratins. Unlike their more delicate artichoke cousins, cardoons possess robust, thistle-like stalks that were the primary edible component. Their slightly bitter taste made them a sophisticated addition to aristocratic feasts. Medieval cooks also believed in their medicinal value. Cardoons were thought to aid digestion and strengthen the heart, making them a staple in monastery gardens. In some regions, their flower buds were used as a rennet substitute for cheese making. Why don't we see cardoons in supermarkets today? Perhaps because they require patience to prepare. Peeling and soaking the stalks is time-consuming. But if you ever stumble upon them at a farmer's market, consider giving them a try. Rutabaga. Rutabaga, or swede, a cross between a turnip and a cabbage, was a common root vegetable in medieval times. It was widely grown in colder regions because it thrived in poor soil and harsh weather. The starchy, slightly sweet flesh made it a staple food, often boiled, mashed, or roasted. Their slightly sweet, earthy flavor was a welcome addition to the often bland medieval diet. In Scandinavia and Scotland, rutabaga was used in stews and pies, frequently mixed with other root vegetables. During food shortages, it was relied on heavily due to its long storage life. They were also super nutritious, packed with vitamins and fiber. In a time when scurvy and other deficiencies were common, having a reliable source of nutrients was crucial. They were a good source of vitamin C, which was a huge bonus. And get this, they were easy to store. You could keep them in a cool, dark place for months, ensuring a steady supply of food throughout the winter. By the 18th century, it became more associated with animal feed, which led to its decline in human diets. Despite its fall from favor, rutabaga still appears in traditional European dishes like Scottish neeps and tatties, and Swedish rotmos. It remains a symbol of resilience in agriculture, proving its worth in both medieval and modern food security. Rampion. Rampion was once a prized root vegetable and leafy green. It was cultivated for both its tender leaves, which were used in salads and had a slightly peppery flavor, adding a bit of zing to meals, and its parsnip-like roots, which were boiled or roasted. They were often eaten raw, like a crunchy snack, or cooked in stews and soups. They were also sometimes pickled, which was a great way to preserve them for the winter months. During medieval times, it was a common garden plant in Europe, often grown alongside other root crops. This vegetable was especially popular in Germany and France. In folk traditions, it was believed to have medicinal properties, particularly for improving digestion. Over time, rampion became overshadowed by easier-to-grow greens and root vegetables, leading to its near disappearance from modern kitchens. Though rare today, rampion remains a historical curiosity. It was even referenced in fairy tales like Rapunzel, where its theft from a garden set the story in motion. Ground elder. Ground elder, also known as bishop's weed, was a surprisingly common, though perhaps reluctantly embraced, green in medieval times. It's important to note that while consumed, it wasn't always a beloved crop, but rather a readily available one. Think of it as the medieval equivalent of that persistent weed that just won't quit. This perennial herb was abundant, often growing wild, and its leaves were gathered and cooked much like spinach. While not known for a particularly refined flavor, often described as slightly bitter or earthy, it provided a valuable source of greens, especially in times of scarcity. Medieval people were resourceful, and they knew how to make the most of what was available. Ground elder was often boiled or added to stews and soups, providing much-needed vitamins and minerals. It was a common sight in the gardens of monasteries, which often cultivated a wide variety of plants for both culinary and medicinal purposes. Beyond its culinary uses, ground elder was also believed to have medicinal properties. It was used to treat various ailments, including gout and digestive issues. However, its invasive nature meant that it was often viewed as a nuisance, and its presence in gardens was not always welcomed. The story of ground elder highlights the practical approach of medieval people to food. They utilized readily available resources, even those considered weeds, to ensure sustenance. It's a testament to their adaptability and resourcefulness, turning a persistent plant into a dietary staple. Alexanders. Alexander's was a widely cultivated vegetable before celery became dominant. Its leaves, stems, and roots were all edible, with a flavor reminiscent of parsley and celery combined. It was often used in broths, salads, and as a side dish, particularly in England and France. The stems were often cooked like celery, braised or added to stews and soups. They had a slightly pungent flavor, which added a unique zest to medieval meals. The leaves, with their aromatic, herbaceous taste, were used as a flavoring herb, much like parsley. They were also sometimes eaten raw in salads, adding a peppery kick. And then there were the seeds. They were dried and used as a spice, adding a warm, pungent flavor to dishes. They were also sometimes used to make a type of medieval mustard. This plant, also known as black lovage, was brought to Europe by the Romans, and it quickly became a staple in medieval gardens. Monasteries grew Alexanders for both culinary and medicinal purposes. It was believed to aid digestion and was often included in dishes meant for the sick. By the 16th century, celery had largely replaced it, leading to its decline in popularity. Although mostly forgotten, Alexanders still grow in coastal areas, where it was once intentionally planted. Some traditional English recipes still mention it, preserving its legacy in historical food culture. Scorzonera. Scorzonera, also known as black salsify, was a valued root vegetable in medieval European cuisine. It was often prepared by boiling or frying, developing a mild, slightly sweet flavor, similar to asparagus. Spain and Italy cultivated scorzonera extensively. In addition to being a food source, it was believed to have medicinal benefits, particularly for treating snake bites and digestive issues. The plant's long, dark roots were sometimes ground into flour during food shortages. Today, scorzonera is mostly grown as a specialty crop, but it remains an example of medieval vegetables that once played an important role in daily sustenance. Salsify. Salsify, often called oyster plant, due to its mild seafood-like taste, was a staple root vegetable in medieval Europe. It was widely cultivated for its long, slender roots, which were boiled, roasted, or mashed, much like parsnips. The leaves were also eaten in salads, while the flowers and seeds were sometimes used in herbal remedies. France and Italy were particularly known for their salsify dishes, often cooking it with butter and herbs to enhance its delicate flavor. It was also a common ingredient in hearty peasant stews, where it provided valuable sustenance during the winter months. Despite its popularity in medieval cuisine, salsify gradually fell out of favor as more versatile root vegetables like potatoes took its place. Today, it remains a niche ingredient, found primarily in gourmet cooking and historical food recreations. Kohlrabi. Kohlrabi, a peculiar-looking vegetable with a bulbous stem and leafy greens, was widely consumed in medieval Europe. It belonged to the brassica family, along with cabbage and kale, and had a sweet, slightly peppery taste. Kohlrabi was often sliced thin and eaten raw or cooked in soups and pottages. It was particularly favored in Germany and Central Europe, where it thrived in cold climates. Medieval farmers appreciated its ability to grow quickly and provide a steady food source when other crops were scarce. The leaves were also used in cooking, much like collard greens. Over time, kohlrabi remained a common sight in European home gardens, but never gained widespread commercial popularity. It continues to be enjoyed in traditional dishes, particularly in Eastern European cuisine. Potimarron. Potimarron, a small chestnut-flavored winter squash, was an important vegetable in medieval France. Its name combines potiron, pumpkin, and marron, chestnut, reflecting its unique taste. The flesh was used in soups, pies, and stews, providing a rich, nutty sweetness to dishes. Medieval farmers prized potimarron for its long storage life and high nutritional value. It was a reliable source of food throughout the winter months and was often cooked with honey and spices to create warming meals. The skin was also edible, making it an efficient ingredient in the kitchen. Though squash varieties like butternut and acorn have since overshadowed potimarron, it remains a favorite in French cuisine, where it is still used in hearty autumn dishes. Jerusalem artichoke, topinambour. Jerusalem artichoke, also known as topinambour, was a valued tuber in medieval Europe. It was cultivated for its knobby, potato-like roots, which had a slightly sweet, nutty flavor. Unlike potatoes, which arrived in Europe centuries later, Jerusalem artichokes were a crucial carbohydrate source during medieval times. This plant thrived in poor soil and required little maintenance, making it a reliable food source in times of scarcity. It was often boiled, roasted, or mashed into porridge-like dishes. In France, it remained a popular vegetable for centuries, particularly in rustic cooking. Despite its resilience and nutritional benefits, Jerusalem artichoke fell out of favor due to its reputation for causing digestive discomfort. Today, it is making a quiet comeback in farm-to-table cuisine and health-conscious diets. Krasny, Chinese artichoke. Krasny, a small spiral-shaped tuber, was introduced to medieval Europe through trade routes. It became a popular winter vegetable due to its crisp texture and mild, nutty taste. It was often pickled, added to soups, or sautéed with butter and herbs. In France, Krasny was cultivated in monastery gardens and prized for its ability to grow in cold climates. It was also believed to have medicinal properties, particularly for improving digestion. Over time, it was replaced by more common root vegetables, like potatoes and carrots. Today, Krasny is a rare delicacy in French and Japanese cuisine, appreciated for its unique appearance and delicate flavor. Patty pan squash. Patty pan squash, with its distinct scalloped shape, was widely grown in medieval Europe. It was harvested young and cooked whole or sliced into stews and pottages. The flesh was tender and mildly sweet, making it a versatile ingredient. This squash variety was particularly popular in Eastern and Southern Europe, where it was often stuffed with grains or meats. It thrived in monastery gardens and was considered an important food source during the warmer months. Over time, other squash varieties became more commercially dominant, and patty pan squash faded from mainstream agriculture. However, it remains a cherished heirloom vegetable among gardeners and chefs. Skirret. Skirret was a medieval root vegetable known for its sweet parsnip-like flavor. It grew in clusters of thin roots, which were boiled or fried for a soft, creamy texture. Medieval cooks often combined skirret with butter and spices for a rich side dish. It was particularly favored in England and Germany, where it was grown in monastery and castle gardens. Skirret was also used in medicinal preparations to aid digestion and boost energy. Despite its popularity in medieval cuisine, skirret declined with the rise of the potato. Today, it is being rediscovered by heritage farmers interested in reviving forgotten crops. Fava beans. Fava beans were a dietary staple across medieval Europe. They were dried and stored for winter, then rehydrated for stews, porridges, and bread making. Their high protein content made them essential for peasant diets. Monasteries grew fava beans extensively, as they were a key ingredient in Lenten meals. In Italy and Spain, they were often cooked with garlic and herbs, while in England, they were mashed into thick soups. Despite their historical importance, fava beans declined in popularity with the introduction of the common bean from the Americas. However, they remain a key ingredient in Mediterranean and Middle Eastern cuisines. Turnip-rooted chervil. Turnip-rooted chervil, a lesser-known root vegetable, was cultivated in medieval Europe for its mild, nutty taste. The roots were roasted or mashed, while the leaves were used as an herb. It was particularly valued in France and Germany, where it was grown alongside parsnips and carrots. Turnip-rooted chervil was also believed to have medicinal benefits, particularly for respiratory health. This vegetable declined due to its slow growth and short storage life. Today, it is being revived in specialty farming circles for its unique flavor. Parsnips. Parsnips were a foundational vegetable in medieval diets, often used in stews and pottages. Their natural sweetness made them a substitute for sugar in some recipes. They were widely grown across Europe, particularly in colder regions where they thrived. The roots were stored through winter and provided crucial sustenance in times of scarcity. Although still consumed today, parsnips have lost prominence compared to carrots and potatoes. However, they remain a staple in traditional British and French cooking. Mongol wurzel. Mongol wurzel, also known as mangle beet or field beet, was a crucial root vegetable in medieval Europe, primarily grown as livestock fodder, but also consumed by peasants. It belongs to the beet family and has a thick, swollen root that could be boiled, roasted, or mashed like turnips. Its leaves were also edible and used similarly to chard or spinach. This vegetable thrived in various soil conditions and was particularly valued in Germany and England, where it was an important food source during times of scarcity. Monasteries and farming estates relied on mangel wurzel as a cheap and abundant crop to sustain both people and animals. By the 19th century, it had become more commonly associated with animal feed, leading to its decline in human diets. However, during wartime food shortages, it was once again used in stews and soups to stretch limited rations. Today, it remains a niche crop, occasionally grown by heritage farmers and culinary historians. Homburg-rooted parsley. Homburg-rooted parsley, a variety of parsley grown for its edible root, was widely used in medieval European kitchens. Unlike common parsley, which was prized for its leaves, this variety developed a thick, carrot-like root with a mild, earthy flavor. It was often cooked in soups, stews, and pottages, providing a nutritious and aromatic base for meals. This vegetable was particularly popular in Germany and Central Europe, where it was cultivated in monastery gardens and used in both culinary and medicinal preparations. The root was believed to aid digestion and strengthen the immune system, making it a valued ingredient in herbal remedies. While Homburg-rooted parsley was eventually overshadowed by carrots and parsnips, it has not disappeared entirely. It remains a common ingredient in traditional German and Eastern European cuisine, particularly in stews and broths. Collard greens. Collard greens, a leafy brassica closely related to kale and cabbage, were a staple in medieval European diets. They thrived in cooler climates and were often grown in monastery gardens, where they provided a reliable source of vitamins and minerals throughout the year. Unlike more delicate greens, collards were hardy and could withstand frost, making them an important winter vegetable. They were typically boiled or stewed with meats, herbs, and grains, creating nourishing meals for both peasants and nobility. In some regions, they were fermented or pickled for preservation. Collard greens remained a staple in certain European cuisines, but eventually became more strongly associated with Southern American cooking, where they were introduced through the transatlantic trade. Today, they remain a key ingredient in traditional dishes across the American South, Portugal, and parts of Eastern Europe. Swiss chard. Swiss chard, also known simply as chard, was widely consumed during the medieval period. Its large, vibrant leaves and thick, crunchy stems provided an abundant source of nutrition. Unlike some leafy greens that wilt quickly, chard could be stored for longer periods, making it a reliable vegetable for both peasants and nobility. The vegetable was often cooked in pottages, soups, and savory pies. It was particularly popular in Mediterranean regions, where it thrived in the mild climate and was frequently combined with garlic, onions, and olive oil. Monks in monasteries cultivated chard for its resilience and high yield, ensuring that fresh greens were available even in colder months. Though chard remains a beloved vegetable in Mediterranean cuisine, it has never achieved the widespread commercial success of spinach or kale. However, it continues to be a popular choice among home gardeners and chefs looking for heirloom greens with historical significance. Danish ballhead cabbage. Danish ballhead cabbage, a dense and round-headed variety, was commonly grown in medieval Europe. Cabbage was a fundamental crop during this period, forming the base of countless soups and stews. This particular variety, known for its tight, compact head and excellent storage capability, was favored in colder regions. Medieval farmers valued cabbages for their ability to withstand frost and provide sustenance during long winters. The leaves were boiled, stuffed, or fermented into sauerkraut, a technique used to preserve food well into the colder months. Cabbage was not just a peasant food. Even noble households incorporated it into their diets due to its versatility and availability. Although modern hybrids have largely replaced the Danish ballhead variety, it remains an important part of Scandinavian and Eastern European culinary traditions, particularly in fermented dishes and hearty stews. Ground cherries. Ground cherries, small, golden fruits enclosed in delicate papery husks, were a widely consumed fruit-vegetable hybrid in medieval Europe. They belonged to the nightshade family, alongside tomatoes and eggplants, and were often used in both sweet and savory dishes. These fruits thrived in temperate climates and were cultivated in monastery gardens for their sweet-tart flavor. They were commonly dried for winter use or turned into preserves. In some regions, ground cherries were added to pottages and meat dishes, where their mild acidity helped balance rich flavors. Though once a common food, ground cherries gradually fell out of mainstream European cuisine as tomatoes and other fruits gained prominence. Today, they are enjoying a small revival among heirloom gardeners and chefs looking to experiment with forgotten medieval flavors. Navy beans. Navy beans, small white legumes, were an important protein source in medieval European diets. They were commonly dried and stored for winter, then cooked in thick stews, soups, and porridges. Their mild flavor and creamy texture made them a staple for both peasants and monks. These beans were particularly popular in monastery kitchens, where they were used in Lenten meals due to their high protein content. In England and France, navy beans were often slow-cooked with herbs and root vegetables to create filling, inexpensive meals that sustained workers and farmers through harsh winters. Though navy beans remain a staple in many cuisines, their association with medieval European food traditions has largely faded. However, they continue to be widely used in traditional dishes such as French cassoulet and American baked beans. Dandelion. Dandelions, now often seen as weeds, were once a valuable vegetable in medieval Europe. Both the leaves and roots were commonly consumed, providing a reliable source of vitamins and minerals, particularly in the early spring when other greens were scarce. Dandelion leaves were frequently used in salads, soups, and cooked dishes, while the roots were roasted to create a coffee-like beverage. The plant was also valued for its medicinal properties and was often prescribed for digestive ailments and liver health. Monks and herbalists cultivated dandelions in monastery gardens for their nutritional and therapeutic benefits. While dandelions have largely fallen out of modern diets, they are still used in traditional herbal medicine and gourmet cooking, particularly in foraged cuisine. Good King Henry. Good King Henry, sometimes called poor man's asparagus, was a commonly foraged green in medieval Europe. This perennial plant was cultivated in monastery and peasant gardens for its tender shoots, which were boiled and eaten like asparagus. The leaves were also consumed, much like spinach, and were rich in iron and vitamins. It was a hardy plant that grew well in poor soil, making it an important food source in rural communities. Additionally, Good King Henry was used medicinally to treat digestive issues and wounds. Though it has largely disappeared from modern kitchens, it is still occasionally grown by enthusiasts interested in reviving forgotten medieval greens. Lamb's quarters. Lamb's quarters, a wild green commonly found in fields and gardens, was a staple vegetable for medieval peasants. It is a cousin of spinach or quinoa. The leaves were rich in nutrients and were eaten fresh in salads or cooked in soups and pottages. This plant was often foraged rather than cultivated, making it a reliable source of food in times of famine. It was particularly popular in England and Scandinavia, where it was sometimes mixed with grains to create nutrient-dense gruels. This plant, also known as fat hen, was a staple for medieval peasants. It's incredibly hardy and grows just about anywhere, making it a reliable source of food when other crops were scarce. It was a true survivor, thriving in diverse conditions. The leaves are the main attraction. They're mild and slightly nutty, making them a versatile addition to all sorts of dishes. They were often boiled or steamed, just like spinach, or added to soups and stews to boost their nutritional value. Lamb's quarters are packed with vitamins and minerals, a crucial benefit in a time when diets could be lacking. While not always intentionally cultivated, its ready availability made it a valuable food source. It was a readily available source of sustenance, and it was a common sight in gardens and fields. Though it was gradually replaced by cultivated greens like spinach, lamb's quarters still grow abundantly in the wild and are occasionally used in foraged cooking today. And there you have it. Have your grandparents or great-grandparents ever told you about any of these vegetables? Do you know anyone that we missed? Please let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click on the notification bell for more content like this. Until next time, bye for now.